Hello everyone. You've probably been in a situation where your friend is telling an unbelievable story, but you know that it's all made up. It just can't be real. Moreover, your friend doesn't have any proof. But what if he had? Sometimes the strangest things get caught on camera and you just can't believe that they're real. But see it for yourself. Let's get it on. Let's be honest, car accidents don't usually end well. Even if it's not a terrible crash, it at least means stress and a lot of trouble for the car owners. Not to mention the damage to the car itself, like dents and so on. But it turns out that you can deal with a small dent by yourself without paying loads of money to special people. All you need is some hot water, which you're going to pour directly on the dent, and a plunger. Yes, it's that simple. We wouldn't believe it either if we hadn't seen it with our own eyes. When South Africa's rugby team won the World Cup for the third time, the whole country celebrated, and the mood of the residents spread far beyond the borders of the country. Sailors of the research vessel Gemini craft took a rugby ball into the sea and convinced a beluga to play with them. Yes, we're talking about a huge, scary whale. The crew members threw the ball into the water, and the whale repeatedly caught it and brought it back. We usually expect this kind of behavior from dogs, but it can also be seen in beluga whales. They're curious, playful, and are ready to make contact with people, especially when they want to celebrate the success of their national team.
Wait. You gotta catch it, dude. Careful, just careful, he's gonna maybe try and get his clean on you.
Riding a bike with one hand? Easy peasy. Riding a bike with no hands? A little harder, but doable.
I meant to do that.
But what about riding without a front wheel? We wouldn't have thought it was possible. The lifts are closed and there's no snow in the foothills. Not a problem. You can put on your skis and ride on a slope even without snow, but only if it's covered with fallen leaves. And please be careful and avoid the trees. If you throw a coin in the water, it will sink instantly. Everyone knows this, and everybody has probably seen coins sink, for example after throwing them into a fountain. But it turns out, even this rule has its exceptions. Aluminium coins can float because they don't weigh much, but you have to place them in the right way, and then the coins will float thanks to surface tension. Physics, friends, what a strange thing. Falling asleep behind the wheel is a nightmare. Even if it's just for a couple of seconds, something terrible can happen. The situation on the road can change at any moment, and if the driver can't react in time, they will pay with their life. And now imagine that you're driving on a busy road and suddenly notice that the driver of the car next to you is sound asleep. Fortunately, he's driving a Tesla with an autopilot. Strange, but okay. But after a while, you notice the same Tesla again with the same guy driving, and he's sleeping again. To be honest, we haven't been able to figure out which kind of sharks are in this video, but we're sure these are sharks. You can enjoy this extreme experience in the Maldives, and we imagine you have to be really brave to do it. Although these sharks probably don't cause any harm to people, they still make you shiver. Well, thanks to Jaws for that. American architect Ronald Rayl installed a pink seesaw on the US-Mexican border wall near El Paso, Texas, half in the US, half in Mexico. Thus, children and adults from the two countries were given the opportunity to play despite the barrier that separates them. Something like an idea of unity, which is easiest to convey through the game. The point is quite simple. The two sides are always connected. What happens on one side will affect what happens on the other side. The architect said that the idea of creating this art object came to him 10 years ago, but he only made it real this year. Trained dogs? You won't surprise anyone with them. Think of something more interesting. What about parrots? And we're not talking about the ability to imitate human speech or other sounds, but about real training. It turns out that if you want to, parrots can be taught how to play basketball. Of course, they won't be able to score a perfect three-pointer, but it's still pretty funny. On a freezing January morning, Daniel Bromley jumped into his car and went to a construction site in the Great Desert of Victoria in Western Australia. He was on a rescue mission, but he didn't know what kind of animal he would save that day. Daniel used to wake up at 3 a.m. every day and walk 15 kilometers along a trench dug in the middle of the desert. They were going to lay a gas pipeline there, but that wasn't why the guy came to the construction site. He was pulling out the animals that had accidentally fallen into the trench. The guy was just looking around when he saw a little mouse lying on the ground. It was very cold and hardly moving anymore. It's worth saying that there are a lot of mice in the Australian deserts, but there are also a lot of predators who don't mind having them for lunch. So these creatures are very cautious and scared, and meeting one of them is very rare. Daniel carefully picked up the mouse, hoping for the best, but the tiny creature didn't even move. The man suspected that it was just numb and took the poor animal to his car. After 20 minutes under the heater, the poor rodent came to its senses.
Oh, hello. Good morning.
But Daniel decided to wait until the evening. Only when the sun began to set, the guy released the mouse and it ran away happily. Snowboarding among trees is not a good idea, especially if you're not a professional, but some people dare to do it because they are properly trained. For example, Sani Oksanen from Finland. This girl knows exactly what to do with a snowboard, and thanks to this, she can show the world a real fairy tale winter. It often happens in movies and detective novels that the perpetrator gets caught red-handed. Nevertheless, in real life, this hardly ever happens, let alone caught on camera. However, just for you, we found one unbelievable example. It happened in Seattle. A Costco employee noticed that two suspicious people, one of whom had a knife with him, were planning to carry a pretty large amount of expensive devices through the fire escape. He immediately called the police, and the officers who arrived at the scene hid at the gate. It wasn't long before the burglars came out and fell right into the hands of the police. Their accomplice, who was waiting in a car nearby, was arrested too. Authorities believe the group may have been responsible for another Costco robbery. Then the price of the stolen goods amounted to $2,200. Rena Casserly is a famous German acrobat and animal trainer. In his Instagram, you can find a lot of inspiring videos and photos, especially with elephants. Despite his rather young age, Rena knows how to communicate with these amazing animals and perform dizzying tricks with their help. Elephants help Rena to throw balls into the basketball rings, and they do it themselves. They also juggle and allow Rena to stand on their tusks. Moreover, they spin the hoop and also throw Rena around all the time, sometimes by themselves and sometimes with the help of a seesaw. It looks like they adore their human. Rena's gang consists of 5 elephants, and the guy is a 7th generation animal trainer. It's not surprising that he finds it so easy to get along with elephants and considers himself their friend. Rope jumping for a long time without stumbling isn't an easy thing to do.
Oops.
You lose your breath, you fall over your feet, and so on. Skateboarding without falling also requires certain skills, otherwise you can end up in the hospital. But how about combining these two activities? No, we're not crazy, it's actually a thing. Look what this guy's doing. By the way, they say that some masters can rope jump while skating together with the board. However, that's a whole other level. In action movies, there's always a scene where a car stops abruptly, turns around, and eventually stops right next to the sidewalk. Taxi movies are basically made up of these stunts, but how about a sharp braking on the water? And not on screen, but in real life. During a drill, Malaysian police officers showed how to quickly moor a boat to a pier or another ship. And let's be honest, only people with steel nerves can stand on the key during such a trick. Perhaps if these exercises hadn't been filmed, no one would have believed this was possible at all. Cool, too cool. However, some people online believe that the captain of the boat was helped by fenders, special devices that smooth the mooring. These can be car tires, special inflated cylinders or spheres, and even ropes. If it weren't for them, the ship would have probably ended up stuck in the pier. Some people think that golf is an incredibly boring pastime that's suitable only for the elderly. You just roll a ball into a hole, boring, no adrenaline. Well, you probably think that only because you've never played golf in Florida, because here at any moment you can see an alligator. Alligators like to sit next to golf clubs because they're often built in places that are also perfect for these reptiles. Usually these are warm areas with lakes and rich vegetation, a real paradise for these creatures. And the fact that there are some weirdos with clubs walking around, who cares about them? So alligators just ignore them. Have you ever tried blowing out bubbles at low temperatures? They freeze almost instantly and fall and break. But if you create a bubble on a stable surface and find a good camera, you can see how the soapy water turns into ice. And you wouldn't believe how fascinating it can be if you hadn't seen the whole process for yourself. Of course, a special composition should be used. You have to use not only soapy water, but add some corn syrup and sugar to make the bubbles more resistant. It's also important to choose the right weather. The colder it is, the faster the bubbles will freeze. And don't forget about the wind. It can easily ruin the whole experiment. Psst, dude, are you looking for new technologies and great gadgets? Are your thoughts focused on the future? Do you love huge vehicles and can't imagine your life without robots around you? Then visit TechZone and you'll find all this and more. The link is in the description. You interested? Great.